in your chest, a quiet whisper in the background of your thoughts telling you something isn't right. You're standing there, trying to hold on, while the person who once looked at you like you were everything now seems distant, unreachable, emotionally absent. They used to smile when they saw you. They used to seek you out, to need you, or at least it felt that way. But now, without any clear explanation, they've started to fade away. They no longer text you the same way. They no longer listen with real attention. Their eyes no longer hold the same warmth when they look at you. But you refuse to accept it. You create stories to justify their behavior. You invent reasons, excuses, imaginary circumstances. You lie to yourself, because to face the truth would mean demolishing the emotional castle you've built, brick by brick, out of pure illusion. And somewhere deep inside you, inside all of us, there's a part that clings to the sweet lie rather than face the violent truth. You're not here by accident. There's something in you that already knows. It senses it. It's tired of pretending not to notice. Yes, maybe you're surrounded by people, but how many of them are really with you? How many stay when you're no longer useful, when you're no longer fixing their problems, when you're not feeding their ego or filling their emptiness? There are people who don't love you, not the way you think, not the way you need. They tolerate you. They use you. They manipulate you with carefully rehearsed smiles. They keep you close, but always one step behind, because they're not interested in your essence. What they want is your energy, your attention, your emotional availability. And the worst part? They know exactly what they're doing. They know what buttons to press to keep you hooked. They know how to sound broken, just enough for you to feel like you have to fix them. And you, with that limitless heart, you do it, at the expense of your peace, your identity, your emotional well-being. Have you ever asked yourself why some people disappear just when you need them the most? Why they only show up when they're hurting, but vanish when it's your soul that's breaking? Have you stopped to reflect on how often you give and how little you receive in return? That emotional scale is always out of balance, but you keep trying to steady it, even if it means sacrificing yourself completely. Why? What are you really looking for? Love? Acceptance? Some long-lost validation you never received in childhood? Maybe a subconscious promise that if you just give enough, someone will finally choose to stay. Carl Jung said it clearly. People do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. We're going to descend, without fear, into the basement of your consciousness, into that dark corner where you've been storing all the "it's fine" and maybe they're just busy excuses. We're going to turn the light on in that uncomfortable space where a painful truth has been waiting to be acknowledged. That person you care so deeply about doesn't feel the same way. They never did. What they wanted wasn't you. It was the way you made them feel, the reflection of themselves they saw in your eyes. What they loved was what they could take from you. And the most painful part? You knew it. From the very beginning, you sensed it. But you looked away, because the human mind is a master illusionist. It hides red flags behind hope. It turns warning signs into background noise. Accepting that someone has been using you is not only humiliating, it's emotionally shattering. It forces you to confront your vulnerability, your deep need for love, your emotional dependence. And that's where the real battle begins, between what you want to believe and what's actually happening, between the fantasy you've been feeding and the reality that's been draining you. This isn't going to be a comfortable video. You're not here to have your ego stroked. You're here because part of you is exhausted. Part of you needs answers. You want to understand why you let them treat you this way. You want to learn how to finally recognize those people who don't value you, who don't love you, who only use you, not by mistake, but by design, as a psychological pattern, as a way of being. This isn't just one sad story. It's a mirror. And what you're going to see might not be pleasant, but it will be necessary. So, get ready. We're going to explore the fractures in the human soul. We're going to analyze the behaviors of people who pretend to care, who use words as bait, who know exactly when to show up and when to disappear, just to keep you emotionally dependent. And we're going to do it through the lens of deep psychology, through the darkness that Jung understood so well. Because if you don't confront your shadow, you'll spend your life trapped in it. This is not just another video. This is a confrontation. With them, yes, but above all, with yourself. Let's continue exactly where we left off. We're going to go even deeper. No circles, no repetition, no soft edges. Let's talk about something silent, yet deeply powerful. Something very few dare to name. Emotional debt. Yes, emotional debt. Because when someone uses you, and you don't see it, or worse, you see it and allow it, you fall into a toxic dynamic that rarely speaks its name, but always leaves a permanent scar. You begin to feel like you owe them something, a debt you never signed for, never agreed to, and yet you carry it every day. Why? Because they made you believe you had to, that walking away meant you were selfish, that setting boundaries made you a bad person, that if you didn't save them, you were heartless. They conditioned you, slowly, skillfully, with guilty silences, with gentle manipulation disguised as love, with words like, "You're all I have," or "I'd be nothing without you." They turned you into their safety net, their unofficial therapist, their emotional partner without commitment, their crutch. But they never gave you the same in return. They never matched your effort. They never sat down to truly ask, "And how are you, really?" Because it was never about you. It never was. And here's where one of the most sinister parts of this dynamic shows up. False gratitude. That empty kind of thankfulness used to keep you close. They say, "Thank you for always being there," but they do nothing to protect your well-being. They say, "I don't know what I'd do without you," but never make sure you have a space to lean on too. Gratitude becomes emotional blackmail. And you, with your heart full of pure intentions, fall into the trap again and again. Because a part of you needs that role of savior, even if you're bleeding inside. Carl Jung once spoke of the archetype of the wounded healer, a figure who dedicates themselves to healing others, all while neglecting their own wounds. And maybe, without even realizing it, that's exactly where you find yourself right now. Fixing, supporting, holding others together, even as the cracks inside you continue to widen. Because the more you give, the further they drift away. The more you surrender, the more they demand. The harder you try to be seen as valuable, the more invisible and replaceable you feel. And here comes one of life's cruelest paradoxes: the fear of losing someone who never truly loved you. How can that be? How can you cry over someone who has given you nothing tangible, nothing real, beyond the illusion that maybe someday they might? It's because you're not really mourning them. You're grieving the version of them that existed only in your mind. You're mourning the promises that were never fulfilled, all the scenarios you built up in your imagination, all the hopes the what-ifs, the dreams that never came to be, and never will. So how do you begin to free yourself? The key lies in recognizing the difference between presence and connection. Because someone can physically be next to you every day and still not be truly with you in any meaningful sense. And the opposite is also true. Someone can leave your life and still treat you with more respect than the one who shares your bed each night. Some people don't stay because of love. They stay because it's convenient, because you're useful, because you've unknowingly become their free therapist, their emotional outlet, their personal audience, their dumping ground for unresolved frustrations. And if you don't put a stop to it, this turns into a pattern, an emotional addiction cleverly disguised as loyalty. You start justifying the unjustifiable. You begin to normalize pain, to romanticize waiting, to convince yourself that true love must mean sacrifice. But let me be very clear. What you're experiencing is not love. It's a one-sided dependency, a parasitic relationship where you keep giving, and they just keep taking. And if you're still holding on to hope, if you're still telling yourself that one day they'll wake up, see your worth, and finally say, "I appreciate you," then please stop. That day will not come. Because someone who feeds off you, who drains your energy for their own survival, will never be the one to teach you how to walk away. They won't let you go, not because they love you, but because losing you would mean confronting the emptiness they carry inside. And they're not ready to face that. They'd rather have you continue to carry their darkness while they pretend to be your light. Now we enter deeper waters. The idea of idealization as a form of emotional escapism. You don't idealize someone who uses you because they're truly exceptional. You do it because you need something to hold on to. You turn them into your compass, your anchor, your reason to keep going. Because if you let go, you're forced to confront the gaping void of your own loneliness. And that hurts more than any breakup ever could. But you can't keep running from yourself. You can't keep holding up someone who would never stop to catch you if you were the one falling. You can't keep calling it fate when it's clearly a toxic loop. Want to know if someone really loves you or just needs you? Watch how they react when you stop giving them what they want, when you say no, when you set a boundary. That's when the truth comes out. Because real love isn't tested when everything's easy. It's revealed when you're no longer useful to them. That's when the mask falls. That's when you see whether there was genuine affection or just convenience. And now, the hardest part to admit, maybe that person you're so deeply tied to isn't even fully aware of the damage they're causing. Because there's something more dangerous than conscious manipulation, emotional unconsciousness. People who've never done the inner work, who carry unresolved trauma, who act out old patterns on autopilot. And you become the collateral damage of their inner war. But that still doesn't excuse it. Understanding isn't the same as excusing. You can have compassion for someone's pain and still walk away, because your peace matters more than any shared history. You weren't born to be someone's unfinished project. You weren't born to be a backup plan. You weren't born to be an emotional sponge for someone else's chaos. And if you've made it this far, if you're still here, still listening, it's because something inside you is already awakening. That part of you that no longer wants to be useful, but wants to be loved. Truly loved. Without conditions, without manipulation, without emotional debt. So now the question becomes painfully simple. How many more chances will you give someone who doesn't love you? How many more times will you allow someone who doesn't value you to take up space in your life? How much longer will you postpone the bravest act of all? Walking away when you know you're not being appreciated. You don't need to scream. You don't need revenge. You just need to do the one thing they fear the most: disappear. Because when you're gone, they can no longer use you. When you walk away, they lose their hold on you. And when you finally close that door, even if it breaks your heart, you begin to take your power back. And that's where we leave it for now. But what happens next? That's entirely up to you. Because if you've stayed until the end, if you haven't clicked away, if you didn't tune out with a, "Yeah, I already knew this" excuse, then let me tell you something that no one else will. You are no longer the same person you were just minutes ago. Because now you have something you didn't have before: awareness. Awareness of the hidden game, the silent power plays, the emotional language that speaks louder than any empty promise. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. That strange feeling you've carried with you, the sense that something was always off. It wasn't your imagination. That discomfort, that unease that would sneak up on you in their presence, the weight in your chest, the tension in your body. It was all real. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't paranoia. It was your intuition. It was your soul, desperately trying to speak, to warn you, to shake you awake. But you silenced it. You forced it into the shadows because you didn't want to upset someone who deep down never truly cared for you. You tolerated the discomfort because you convinced yourself that it was normal, that love was supposed to feel like that: confusing, painful, heavy. But now, you're not asleep anymore. The fog is lifting. The illusion is crumbling. You start to see the cracks, the imbalance, the silent manipulation, the dependency disguised as love. You start to see that it was never love. It was need. A need to be needed. A desire to be chosen. A hunger for attention that was never fully satisfied. And now, finally, you understand. You weren't free. You were convenient. You weren't cherished. You were used. You were a placeholder, a temporary comfort, a distraction. And the most powerful realization: you know that you can leave, that you deserve to leave. Because real self-love isn't a motivational quote taped to your mirror. It's not a bubble bath or soft music playing in the background. Real self-love is hard. It's painful. It's making the decision to walk away from someone who never truly saw you, who only came around when they were lonely and vanished the moment you needed them. And right here, right now, is where everything begins to change. Because when you find the courage to disappear from the life of someone who only saw you as useful, you don't become the villain. You become someone who finally realized that their worth isn't measured by how much they are needed, but by how much they choose not to give away to people who never earned it. You're not running away. You're being reborn. You're shedding the version of yourself that settled for less, that accepted crumbs and mistook them for care. The version of you that thought closeness meant love, that being around was enough, even if your soul was starving. And yes, it hurts. It burns. You can feel it in your chest. Your throat tightens just thinking about the goodbye. The thought of walking away feels like losing a part of yourself. But listen, that is your sign. That pain, it's the signal. Because no one should hurt you that deeply. No one should have that much control over your peace, especially from a distance. No one should be allowed to disturb your mind, your heart, your stability, the way they do. There are people who don't wish you harm, but still bring harm to your life. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Enough to close the door. Enough to disappear. Enough to finally, truly choose yourself. Yes, it might be difficult at first. Yes, the guilt may whisper. Yes, the urge to explain yourself might feel overwhelming. But hear me clearly, do not explain your peace. Do not justify your boundaries. Do not apologize for saving yourself. The person who failed to appreciate you when you were present doesn't deserve even a single word when you walk away. So if any part of this message has stirred something in you, if it has hit a nerve, cracked something open, brought something to the surface that you've been trying to bury, I want you to do just one thing, a simple act of declaration, a silent revolution. Leave this phrase in the comments: I am not your shelter if you are my storm. Nothing more. Just that. Anyone who reads it will understand. They'll know you've awakened too. And if this video spoke to you in a way no one else ever has, if you felt that finally someone found the words for what you've been carrying silently inside, then subscribe, but not out of obligation. Subscribe because here, in this chaotic corner of emotional turmoil, we're not done. Not even close. We're going to keep digging. We're going to keep pulling uncomfortable truths out from under the rug where they've been buried for too long. We're going to keep tearing off the masks, one by one, until what's left is nothing but the raw, unfiltered reality. And we're going to keep choosing something that very few have the courage to face: the truth, even when it hurts. Share this. Share it with the one who needs it most. With the person who's been stuck for years in a one-sided relationship, convincing themselves that crumbs are enough. With the one still waiting for a call that's never going to come. With the soul who wakes up every morning hoping that this will be the day they're finally seen, finally chosen. Be the spark. Be the switch that turns on the light in the darkest corner of someone else's shadow. And now I'm leaving. But not like everyone else. Not with a lukewarm goodbye. Not with a cookie-cutter phrase that sounds nice, but means nothing. I'm leaving with silence. The kind of silence that only arrives after everything's been said. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, but confronts. The silence that forces you to think, to feel, to remember. I'm leaving with that echo that won't shut off. That voice in your head that keeps playing even after you've closed this video. Because once you know your worth, you simply can't stay where you're not valued. So close your eyes, breathe, and disappear until the next truth finds you.